Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us in the European Parliament. Welcome to this Green IFA Group live stream from plenary in Strasbourg. We're here to discuss a big topic that's on everyone's lips here, and that's corruption, specifically the Qatargate corruption scandal that has rocked the European Parliament since former Vice President Eva Kaili was arrested in December, and then several other MEPs and staff were implicated in this. We're here with our candidate, our Green IFA candidate to replace the Vice President, Gwendoline Delbos-Corfield. You're very welcome. Thanks
Hello.
for joining us late on a Monday evening ahead of a busy week for you. We have questions from the audience which we've collected, but first, what happened and why? What has led to the point where you're now running for Vice President of the European Parliament?
Well, one of the vice president, Eva Kaili, in fact, one of the most prominent vice president, was found with money in bags, and not only her, but her father was found also with money in bags. This is a bit of a romance, a very bizarre story, very weird story. It is, of course, not the usual corruption stories we are used to, but it is a very of course, a strong image for the public, and you understand that. This is a strong criminality. I mean, you don't expect that bad criminality. But the truth is that you do have an everyday little corruption here, and too many MEPs are not dealing with public money in a serious way enough. And in this case, well, of course, she had to be dismissed because she's even facing justice. And so the place of this vice presidency is now vacant. The Greens have one person in the 14 vice president. We think that in a balanced way, we should be two. It would be more proportionate to our group size and to the ideas that we support. And also, to be honest, we really think we should be there because we have been the ones that have always worked on transparency the most in this parliament. In 2017 already, Sven Giegold had done a report, the 2017 report on transparency and accountability.
That comes to our first question from citizens, and many have asked it. Angela and Daniela from Belgium, for instance, and many others. What are those changes that are needed to prevent this sort of corruption scandal happening again? So
I want to stress once again that in this very specific case, which is a really very bad criminal case, there was not that much that you can do, because when someone is so greedy and so wanting to have so much money, you just have to face the criminal case that it is. But on the fact that people are not being serious enough on who they meet, how they use the money, what they are supposed to accept from foreign countries, but also from corporate business and all of this. On all of this, we already, in fact, have thought a lot of things. We have even voted things, and they're just not applied. So we don't need that many changes. We need things to be applied. We need sanctions. There has never been any sanctions, or nearly never. So you can misuse your European money and not be sanctioned. There are very little deadlines. I mean, this is the problem. The problem is enforcement. So what we need mostly is enforcement and sanctions. And we need people to be more serious, to be transparent on who they meet, what money they receive, and they shouldn't receive, in fact, any money, and how they use their own money of this institution.
And that body that you're being hopefully elected to on Wednesday, that's the Bureau of the European Parliament for everyone at home, and they do have the opportunity to change rules that govern the European Parliament.
Well, they should, because they're the highest body of governance of this institution, which is sad, is sometimes they don't. And it's a very opaque structure, once again, and we don't exactly know what they vote and what they decide. So we would need more transparency also on what is happening in this bureau. But it is the highest level of governance of this institution, so it is the place where they should be very concretely making the decisions that rules are all of our organization and the rules that the 700 of MEPs here are supposed to obey.
Well, we have a follow-up question from Jan in Hungary, which may relate to this, may not, but good to get your take on it. Which European parties are not interested in introducing stricter measures so far in order to prevent corruption in the European institutions?
It's always very difficult to know because they're not transparent on this. At the moment, with the Qatargate, every group will say that they want to. If you take on the long term, I say it again, it's always been the Greens that have stand for it. The left in general stands for it more than the right. Once again, there's a difference between the declaration and what exactly happens. So in declarations, most of the groups will never say that they are against transparency. When you do attempt to do things, that's when you are going into a lot of resistance, and this resistance comes in most of the groups, S&D included, Renew included, and of course EPP and ECR. There are probably some people in these groups that are ready to be transparent, but you have a majority in this group that are resistant to any implementation, serious implementation that we try, serious enforcements that we try, and I have seen that with my own eyes because I'm in this very specific working group called Rule of Procedure, and this working group is the one that should translate all of this in concrete rules, and we never managed to translate it in concrete rules because we have these resistance coming from nearly all the groups.
So a bit of a struggle ahead, no matter what the outcome. On rule of law issues, because we also want to give a little bit of a flavour of the experience you have as a Member of Parliament. You're the rapporteur on the situation in Hungary. You're the lead negotiator for the European Parliament on this. You also cover the PEGA committee on spyware, the spyware scandal, the Constitutional Affairs Committee. So you have a lot of experience, foreign interference. I'm just reading the list here of the different committees that you're involved in. We have a question on rule of law more generally in Europe. One from Radoslaw in Poland. He says, we also see corruption with EU funds in member states, for instance, in Poland and Hungary. How do we address that?
Yes, so just to start on, it's true that since I have come into this parliament, I really have having a profile very rule of law. It wasn't something I chose before I came here, but it progressively became a portfolio that is really always around all of these topics. And it's really interesting to always do the links in the different committees and the different issues, because all of this is very linked. And once again, the internal rules that we are giving ourselves in this parliament is also very linked with how we deal with the rest of the world and the other institutions, the Council and the Commission, and the Member States. And it is important when we are making lessons to countries, like we do with Hungary and Poland, that we are even more serious in this Parliament. We have been, this Parliament, very strong in saying that Poland and Hungary should not get any more money because they are misusing it, most of all Hungary, which has a really big record of corruption. Poland, we have a big problem of rule of law, but Hungary will also have a problem of money disappearing in the pockets of a few oligarchs. And we have been, this parliament, the ones the most vocal to say this must stop. And we've managed it. We've managed to convince Commission to really apply these rules, and you may know that now there will be strict pressure put on conditionality on the money that the European money that goes to these countries if they do not, if they're not serious on a certain number of things. But it is even more hypocrite if we are very strong on the others and we're not strong enough on ourselves.
Well, that's the thing. Do you think this damages the Parliament's ability to talk about the situation in Poland or Hungary when these sort of scandals break?
It's of course damaging. I mean, the minute this came out, I got very nasty mails. I get very nasty mails from Hungarians all the time because I'm the rapporteur on the Hungarian situation, and the Fidesz people are not happy with me, the people that are around Orban. But in this specific case, I received even more nasty mails saying, you know, oh, so you are always saying that we are not serious enough with the EU money, but look at yourselves, look at the Parliament. So it is a problem when you are a rapporteur on that sort of topic. We have been in the last years looking into what is happening in Malta. We have been looking into what happens in Bulgaria. We know that we are worried about problems in Greece. We have concerns on a number of member states. And every time that we as members of Parliament act on these topics, come as rapporteur or in charge of a file to say something, we will now face the problem, of course, that will be sent back to us. Yes, well, you have the Qatargate, so what can you say?
And regardless of who ends up in the job, do you think this is a watershed moment where we will see a change of direction and we will see stronger rules? Or do you think there's some smoke and mirrors happening where it might not necessarily materialize that we have the transparency and the lobbying rules that we would like to see as Greens?
On one hand, I have quite a big trust in the President of the Parliament herself. She has a good record on fighting corruption in her own country, Malta. She is known for that. She is, I think, taking the things very seriously, and she will take it in her own hands. That is why I think she would need me in the bureau next to her to push a bit more. So on that thing, I think that she can be a good force on this, but I think the votes will show very clearly where we stand. If we are in a very conservative business as usual system, I will do a very poor score. Idea, the extreme right will do a good result, and the Social Democrat candidate will do most of the votes, because the big groups will not put in question what is happening. If I do a good result, it will show that there is, in the mind of a lot of MEPs here, finally the idea that things have to change. So I think that the result will tell us what will happen in the next year and a half.
Well, fingers crossed. My last question on my side is, we have a year and a half until the European elections. If you were to be elected, aside, hoping that we can strengthen the rules around corruption, strengthen the rules around lobbying, what are the other priorities for you as Vice President until May next year?
First thing is on transparency itself. I didn't say it, but one of the biggest things is to have a much better protection for those APAs that would need to say that something, those parliamentary assistants that would need to say that something is happening. This is the weakest problem of this institution. Even in Council and in Commission, the people are more protected if they are to say things that they have seen, but misuse that they have seen. In this Parliament, it's not the case. So this would be the priority on transparency issues.
In terms of whistleblower protection?
Whistleblower protection is the most problematic thing in this Parliament today. We are very, very late on this compared to the other institution. Transparency International always insists on this. Second thing is we need to progress on gender equality. This is a typical example where people here are not realizing, my colleagues, members of the Parliament, are not realizing that they vote things that never apply. We voted in various occasions, 2 resolutions, 2 Me Too resolutions here. We still don't have any important things on harassment training, harassment rules, be it professional or sexual. We have voted a number of things on equality, gender equality, and they are not applied. There are no rules that apply to us. My colleagues don't realize that sometimes we vote things that never become a concrete measure. We would also need, of course, to open more this Parliament to civil society, to everyone. We need to still be a more inclusive and open Parliament. We are still too much of a bubble, and people everywhere in Europe don't know enough about what is happening here. So this would also be something I would really want to work on.
There is a question around this special committee, because there's been some disagreement with the political groups over whether the bureau, the high power bureau, can make these decisions, or we need some sort of other body, because that bureau hasn't been able to deliver transparency or lobbying rules in the way that we want. What's our view in having a special committee? Do you think it is important, or it's just another committee to talk shop once again?
I think it's not a problem. I think that if you just put the same people that are in bureau in a special committee, of course, this special committee will be as important and not useful as the bureau was. I think we just need people who want to act. So the name that you give it is a bit of a non-issue for me. If Metsola, the President of Parliament, finds that she needs to do it and then she is efficient in it, well, I still want to trust her for the moment. We will make an assessment of what is happening in 6 months. Once again, my biggest problem today is that there's no deadlines. I have never heard neither Mrs. Metsola, neither anyone else for the moment giving a deadline. So I would be much more wanting to stress the deadline problem, the place where it's discussed, because what I would like to hear is we will have implementation of these rules with sanctions before the end of this term. If it's not done in this year and a half, it won't be done because it will be given back to the next term and we lose again time. So for me, the deadline is the most important problem, and for the moment we have never heard such a clear wording on the fact it will be done before the end of this term.
Well, you are all going to be voting, I hope, in the European elections, and remember this moment, we have a Green candidate who wants to see change as fast as possible, and Gwen, we wish you the absolute best on the vote on Wednesday. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. You can subscribe. I think one of us will send in the chat our little subscription button for the debrief, so you can follow closely what happened this week. And we'll be sure to have follow-up web streams like this in the near future. So thanks to Gwen, and thanks for all your questions at home.